Call to order. Um, Meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, Monday, January 10th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 3, approval of the December 13th, 2021 minutes. Do we have any changes that need to be made? Is everybody good? We have a motion to approve?
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how picky you want to be about minutes.
Vicky is good.
I'll put my glasses on page 3. It one, two, three, fourth paragraph down. Mr. Anderson said most districts in Ames do have any kind of design guidelines. I think you want to say do not.
Good catch.
Good catch.
And then the next paragraph about the Secretary of Interior standards, and it said I stated that they rarely change. I think I said that they do not change. I think I said some other things about guidelines and probably said they changed, but the standards. So I think that was interpreted incorrectly, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 13th meeting as corrected?
I move.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 4, public forum. This time is set aside for public comments on topics of concern to the Historic Preservation Commission other than those on the agenda. The chairperson may limit each speaker to 5 minutes. Please understand that the commission is not likely to act on comments at this meeting due to the meeting requirements of the open meetings law, but may do so at a future meeting. Ray, do we actually have a member of the public here?
He is the
Oh.
architect for the National Register nomination
Okay.
for that building.
Okay.
We're doing the in addition.
Number 5, consider the proposed nomination of Pi Kappa Alpha Fraternity House at 2112 Lincoln Way to the National Register of Historic Places. Thank you guys for sending us all that information about that nomination. Complete National Register nomination, photographs for this fraternity are available on the City of Ames website. Available at that link. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the materials provided? So we need to discuss this. I think we're obligated, Ray, if I'm not mistaken, as a CLG to review these nominations before
Yeah,
they go to the
that's correct.
Park Service. Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you have a presentation or?
Well, just a short one. It's the Pi Kappa Alpha Fraternity House at 2112 Lincoln Way. And it's this proposed National Register nomination. And the reason it's on the agenda tonight is to determine as a commission if you believe it's eligible under criterion A, which are those properties that are associated with events that have made significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. Hopefully you had a chance to look at their nomination on the city website. There is a section of it that talks about determining significance according to criterion A, and the applicant references a multiple property listing entitled Ames 4th Ward, which was prepared by William Page. He's a public historian and preservation planner. He's done quite a bit of work in Ames in past years. And Mr. Page had a statement that resources associated with the Greek system at Iowa State University are considered eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places under criterion A. So what the documentation that he prepared through the multiple property listing would support nomination of this property to the National Register using criterion A, which is what they're proposing. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have. Andy Lorenzen is here from Simonson and Associates Architects. They're actually proposing an addition to this building, and they're seeking state tax credits, and so they're seeking listing on the National Register, and then they would be eligible to apply for those tax credits. And he's here to answer any questions you might have as well.
So I didn't, well, let me ask you this, Ray. I mean, how far along the process are we? I mean, has this been to the SHPO, and is it going out to the SNRC?
It went to SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office in Des Moines. They sent it to us.
Yeah.
And then the commission, it looks at it tonight and determines if you think it's eligible under criterion A. Then it goes to the mayor and the council on January 25th, and they make a separate determination. And then those determinations are sent on to the State Nominations Review Committee, and they have a meeting on February 11th to consider this.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about this, or?
Just curious about the addition that's going to be proposed then.
Oh, the addition? We don't have the site plan yet, so we have not reviewed the addition, but it's a sizable addition they're looking at adding on to the back of it. But it doesn't directly impact what you're being asked to do tonight. And it's not something that you will review. It's a staff review.
And if they're applying for state tax credits, then it'll be,
Right.
obviously they'll have to follow the
Guidelines.
standards.
Yeah, they've been working with the State Historic Preservation Office on that.
So if I may, is Pike trying to move back into the frat house, or is it being adaptively reused? And
Can you come up to the, over here, Andy?
So, as you are alluding to, they're off campus right now, but they're planning to restart the chapter to coincide with what's essentially an adaptive reuse, although it's the same use, but this building was designed as a cold air dorm. So it has everybody living in kind of 2 rooms, and then they have these study rooms that they're assigned to. But the adaptive reuse will be to convert it into like suites or apartments almost. Still have a common dining room, all the common spaces on the first floor, which and common living room, which is kind of the most historically significant room in the building. It's got a nice stone fireplace and some wood detailing. And the dining room, that's on the first floor. That all stays the same. And then the apartments on levels 2 and 3, well, the study rooms will be converted into apartments. Everybody gets their own bathroom instead of the common bathroom. And then there's like a chapter room in the basement that'll stay. And then the addition, basically the point of the addition is to kind of keep the capacity of the building, the occupancy at about the same, which is about 60 members can live in the house with the new addition. So it'll be an addition off the back. And we've been arm wrestling with SHPO and with the city over, it's a pretty good sized addition. That was SHPO's kind of initial take on it. So we shrunk it a floor and we changed the profile of the roof. And then Ray was kind enough to sort of give us a preliminary review of it. And we found out that I had not read the zoning ordinance carefully enough, and I showed some flat roofs where they have to be sloped. And so we're kind of in the middle of the process. We've submitted a part 2. They've asked for, and then now there's an MIR, which is a more information request on it. So we're continuing to massage the design. Our next step is to resubmit the part 2, and then we'll submit a site plan to the city of Ames, and then we'll go forward with the construction documents. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with the tax credit review process, but it's a lot of attention. the reason we're doing the reason we're doing the nomination first is to make sure the building's eligible, obviously, and then we can do the tax credits. And so once SHPO knows that that's kind of the point of the whole thing, they start to really scrutinize the design early.
Right.
The additional is basically on the right side of the screen to the south. And then it's kind of a long, narrow addition. It'll come down to almost that where the cars are there.
Okay.
Not on the public facade, obviously.
Right. It's on the back facade. And then part of the project too is a total, well, the historic building will get all new systems, finishes, upgrades, kind of code compliance and life safety stuff. The parking lot will be removed and replaced. And then there's kind of an ongoing stormwater issue there too that we'll address as part of this as well.
It's been vacant since 2017. Is that?
Well, it's not vacant at the moment. They had to make some upgrades to get it ready for rental, and then there's a group of like unaffiliated students who are renting it from the house corporation and living in it right now. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'm sorry. Yeah. I apologize.
Is the tax credit include the new addition? Do you get credit for that?
The addition is reviewable by SHPO, but it is not part of the
Okay.
qualified
It's like
rehabilitation
an-
expense.
Okay.
Wait, I might have misunderstood your question. There's nothing about the addition in the nomination.
Yeah, no, the state,
The credit, I ask if the credit
Sure, right, okay.
applies to the addition.
no.
But-
It's reviewable by SHPO, but
Okay.
the money that you spend on the addition is not part of the eligible basis for the QREs.
It's
Okay,
not a qualified expense.
yeah. And the eligible basis is the same as the national program,
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If the way it's figured, that you have to spend 50% of the
Oh, yeah,
adjusted basis.
yeah,
is
minimum
it?
of 5,000 or, yeah.
Okay, so is that how it's calculated at the state?
What,
for the state tax credit?
the value of the credit is 25% of how much you spend on the project. roughly.
It can be just 10% more than the value of the property then? It doesn't have to be.
Are you talking about the minimum amount you can spend?
So I
Right.
think what you're asking is to be qualified for the federal or the state tax credit, you have to spend a minimum amount. It's either $5,000 or that calculation.
Okay,
That's kind of hard to do. And I think what you're asking is, does that calculation include the construction of the addition, or is it just the reworking of the historic
yeah,
fabric?
well, no, that's,
Yeah.
it doesn't apply to the new
Right,
construction, but I just ask if the calculation is the same as the federal program.
I think it is,
The state credit is at 25%.
right?
It's 25%, and the federal credit is 20%.
Right,
But the calculation is done the
yeah,
same.
that's what I'm asking.
Yep. I think they base it on the same IRS code.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a comment on the nomination itself. Did you do the nomination?
I did not.
So it's
Okay.
Our
Alexa
consultant.
McDowell, she's a consultant that does a lot of
Yeah.
nominations for the state.
I think it's eligible, definitely. I really disagree that it's eligible under criterion A. I think it should be criterion C. And if the state office is okay with A, I'm fine with it too, but if I were writing it, I would have nominated under criterion C. I think in the actual nomination, what I read is, I don't think it's very well supported under criterion A, because I think it needs more background information on how the Greek system got into universities, nationwide. And I just think there's a lot of background information that's missing. And if we're nominated under criterion C, it would just be for the architectural style, the integrity, and the architect. And I just think it would have been easier and more appropriate to nominate it under that. And I don't want to, if you've already started, I'm just making that comment because I think it's an important distinction
Well,
that
I'll pass that on to Alexa, and then if anything is lost in translation when I tell her, is there a way to? It sounds like you've got some expertise, which I don't have.
Mhm.
If she wants to reach out to you directly to talk about that
Sure.
feedback, would
Yeah.
that be okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, definitely.
So I think if SHPO's already had a crack at this, then I'm fairly confident that they weighed the C option too. The most, if you look at nominations across the country, the most common criteria is a combination of A and C.
Mhm.
You see it all the time. And so I was wondering the same thing, why not C here? And, you look at the photos and it appears to have some degree of integrity. But my thinking is probably once you get into the building and start to look around, that a lot of that integrity is lost. I mean, those hallways where the dorms are,
Yeah.
right off the hallways, that looks completely new.
Well, I think
not original.
it's been remodeled. It's well used building
Yeah.
on the inside. So I think a lot of the integrity lives in the function and the exterior has a lot of integrity, and then just the sort of continuity of use
Mhm.
and ownership and kind of fact that it's been this Greek building the entire time. It's my take on it. I'm not a historian, so I don't.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the integrity is any more affected under either criterion. I don't think you have to have a stronger case for interior integrity if you nominated under C.
Well, I think you do actually, because, they go through the various types of integrity here, and it's, the integrity of setting and feeling and all the kind of amorphous things are a pretty easy argument to make because it's where the building was built. It hasn't been moved. It is still
Right,
this very
right.
Greek-oriented part of Ames. But in the integrity on the outside seems intact. I haven't seen any
That's what I think.
photos, and the common areas seem good too, which is what we look at. But I don't know if this is, personally, I don't know if this is worth, I certainly don't want to in any way torpedo this, but I would just be curious, as you say, why C wasn't.
I really am more curious, and like I say, if OHP staff has looked at it, if the National Register staff has looked at it and they're comfortable with it, I don't care.
Okay.
But if it has to go through their scrutiny, I would be worried about it.
It has already been submitted.
Okay.
I think Alexa submitted this to SHPO originally in June.
Yeah,
Wow.
okay, that's all I need to know.
Like I said, I've read a bunch of nominations written by Alexa McDowell. She does a really good job. I think, yeah. If just for our edification, it'd be nice to know, why not C. But again, just personally, I don't think.
I'll follow up with her and I'll let Ray know and he can disseminate that information.
Well, yeah, it sounds to me like it was just followed Paige's analysis,
Probably.
more or less, which, that's, if it qualifies under that and if it gets approved, that's fine.
I have a question. In just the comments of referring to Paige's review, it comprises, it's part of an important collective resource. Is this the first one that's been nominated of the
I think
fraternity sororities?
the DEU house was nominated like 10 or 12 years ago because they did a full tax credit,
Yeah.
State and federal on that house, which is like maybe 2 blocks.
Yeah, it's right by the Catholic
to the
Church.
east.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of
West.
it's off of
Right.
Lincoln Way. Yeah, that was a
Okay.
tax credit project. The other one is what's now the Iowa House B&B. That was an old fraternity, and that was also a tax credit project.
Okay,
So,
just curious.
That's it.
any other questions or comments? And on behalf of the committee, we thank you for coming tonight and sharing your expertise. And it's I drive by that building all the time, and I noticed it looked, if not abandoned, it looked underutilized.
Yeah.
The sign was gone out front, and I was worried.
Yeah.
I think there was a an old frat house on Highlander or somewhere, Sheldon, that was demolished a number of years ago, and I'd hate to see.
It's a nice building. It's
Mhm.
it's a little well, it's tough to get it to work for what we want it to work for because it's so narrow. You can even tell from the overhead.
Mhm.
It's a very narrow building, so it's tricky, but it's a good building. It's a good two good architects designed it and then added on to it, and it'll work out. I think that they want to do it right. They're working really hard to make sure that it's going to be a good project and that it tees it up for another long run.
Thank you so
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Or do we need to vote to approve or?
We need to vote to decide if you find that the nomination meets the National Register criterion A.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Move to the acceptance.
Anyone want a second?
Can I amend the motion?
Sure.
Could I say that we approve the nomination application and recommend that it be approved by the state commission? Rather than, I'm not comfortable with the information under the narrative. Because it hasn't been completely adopted or we don't have the information that the state staff has approved it completely. I just feel like it should be designated. I don't know whether.
On the review form that goes down to the state,
Okay.
the options are, the commission recommends that the property be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The commission recommends that the property should not be listed on the National Register for the following reasons. The commission chooses not to make a recommendation on this nomination for the following reasons. And then the commission would like to make the following recommendations regarding the nomination.
Well, could
Can we
we,
just do the first one then? Just so
Or
we
could-
recommend it.
or if, to kind of satisfy all our, our thoughts about this, could we do the first option, but then
And
the
then
last option you mentioned, just,
make a recommendation. Yeah,
that they consider criteria?
I think you can.
Mhm. Okay.
We have a motion to support this revised.
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah.
Read it.
Would you read it one more time, please?
Oh, what the choices are?
Yeah, the two choices that we
Yeah.
opted for.
The commission recommends that the property should be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, it does say check the appropriate box. And there are two separate boxes, but I think you could recommend that it be listed and then have some comments. But that second one was the commission would like to make the following recommendations regarding the nomination. So I don't know if they want you to check two boxes. I think you could recommend that it be listed and then
Just add
Add-
comments.
you could add some comments in.
Okay. No, I would.
Okay.
I'm good with
sounds
that.
good.
We have a motion to approve recommendation with comments made.
I move approval.
And I think you need to specify what those comments are as part of the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we approve the nomination, and that our comments are that the nomination be considered under criterion C
And A.
as a more appropriate criterion.
Are you saying just C, or would you like to?
Well, usually they don't want, it's hard to do two. I've always been told that just focus on one criterion.
I would recommend A and C.
Okay.
Because I think Will Page's argument under criterion A makes sense. I had to skim it quickly, but again, the issue with the architecture seems like a valid addition. So, I mean, if I would recommend criteria
Just
A and C.
recommending
I see
adding
that all the
criteria,
time.
right, okay.
It
I would
is
go with
common.
A and C. Just doing a quick click on the statements of significance for the other fraternity houses that have gone through. They've gone A and C.
Have they, okay.
Mhm. I think there's one that says just C only, but
Okay, because I think it's important enough architecturally in the architect that it's, that,
it would make
Should be
sense
added.
to have C. Yeah.
I mean, she points out, in the writing, they said particularly related to the finishes, so there's something internally that must have been off for them not to consider A, right? And we just don't have that
Not
evidence in front
C.
of us.
I can see.
see.
See, I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it just sounds like they went with the recommendation that was made earlier. But,
Historic integrity on the interior, particularly related to the finishes, is insufficient to make a case the registration under criterion C.
Just the interior?
I don't agree with that,
But
but anyway.
that's, yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I would say that there would be, we'd need, that they should investigate it again.
Yeah.
But go with A.
Yeah.
So do we have a revised motion? I'm good.
Where are we at? Revision
Yeah,
B?
yeah.
I mean, C.
Okay, I move that we approve the nomination and add a comment that we believe that it should be considered under criterion C. The nomination should be considered as
Also-
significant under A and C.
C. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can go with
Yeah.
that. A and C.
We have a motion, do we second?
I can second that one. A and C.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you so much. Good luck with your project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very cool building.
Thank you.
Okay, that's right. Number 6 on our agenda, discuss plans for the 2022 Historic Preservation Awards program. I think, Ray, you
Yeah,
gave us information on that.
yeah, there's a memo from Eloise, actually. This is just starting the process for the Historic Preservation Awards. Basically giving you an opportunity to decide whether you want to pursue that this year or not. Eloise did change the nomination form, consistent with what the commission decided at an earlier meeting last year in 2021 for the categories. So it's basically deciding if you want to move forward with the awards this year or not, the award program. And if so, then we'll get the ball rolling with sending out a press release and, notifying neighborhood associations.
Is there any reason because of COVID or any other reason we wouldn't want to pursue this?
Not necessarily.
Any thoughts on this? My understanding is that it's a fairly popular program. Would that be your,
We always would like to see more nominations.
yeah,
Yeah,
you have to remind me, I apologize, do people self-nominate or are they nominated by others?
it's worked both ways.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes property owners nominate their own property and sometimes others do.
Do we have any nominations so far? Just curious.
We haven't opened it up to accept nominations yet, but this would get
Kick it
that
off.
started.
Okay.
Mhm.
They'd be due by end of the day on February 21st.
So it's an online application, right? Or is it just a form that,
Yeah.
I can't remember, are we not supposed to nominate or can we as a committee?
We better.
Edie did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, you can if you want to fill out the form.
I would,
I think we should.
Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
we can try out our new titles for the awards.
Mhm.
Kind of looking at them in print now and I'm kind of regretting making those suggestions.
We can change our minds again,
Yeah,
can't we?
well,
Well, do we have so you're looking for another motion to pursue this?
I think that'd be appropriate.
Okay. Motion to ask the planning staff to initiate this program.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go forth, Ray. Again,
Make it so.
Okay, I'll tell Eloise.
is it inappropriate for us, I mean, if we had any ideas to talk about them? No. For possible award winners? Or is that something we should do offline?
Might want to do it offline
Okay.
first, yeah.
Okay, number 7, consider amendments to Chapter 31, Historic Preservation of the Municipal Code. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jo. Mary Jo and, I can't remember who, these
Yeah,
three.
yeah, Susan kind of made notes and
Well, and so did Angie. I mean, we all three
Well,
were pretty
okay.
active on this.
I didn't bring my notes that I didn't bring that email or anything that I sent. So
Well,
do you have a copy of that?
We do, yeah, we had Eloise make copies for everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Sure.
then I think mostly we were going to try and summarize what we did. I think once we kind of delved into it, it seemed like there's so much and so many questions and comments. And
Oh, I see.
yeah, I was going to say, I think we were all kind of on the same page that something must be done to streamline, obviously, but we weren't quite sure how to proceed. And this is where Angie made the comment about making a list, that we gather further comments and let everybody get a chance to look at the comments that Angie and Mary Jo made, and then add that, and then we can kind of have a master list, perhaps, that we kind of look at. How might we want to streamline this? And it seems like there's so much material in this, and some of it seems very specific to Old Town kinds of things, that if we wanted to, as we're looking at maybe a potential new historic district, separating out design guidelines as a separate document, and maybe also Angie brought up, just from her own experiences, and you can elaborate, the procedural, the process of going through all of this sometimes is not necessarily in sync with what the Chapter 31 versus the building code and Chapter 29, and how we might address some of those kinds of things. So maybe moving forward, we look at, what needs to be cut out? What are the things that need to be there as part of the ordinance versus design guidelines, which could be reference material for the various kinds of districts, like maybe the downtown, the Old Town, and maybe potentially this other area that we're looking at. And then also looking at what are the standards that the minimus that must be met versus, what are our options? So, but Angie, you had some very good comments, I think.
Yeah.
you might want to throw in some
Sure.
of your experiences that.
Thanks, Susan. I think we recognize that the ordinance plays multiple roles or functions, one of which is as a legal document, but there's also an educational component as well. Sometimes homeowners come in, and if they don't have the background, I mean, well, I'm just going to speak for experience. I went down and learned a lot the first time I read through there. So there's multiple functions, and they're both really valid. And so a lot of the conversation has been geared towards, let's separate a lot of these definitions and items out in a separate document to become richer, more text, or less text heavy, more image rich, and really help the educational component of that, which I think is fantastic because it's going to be a fantastic resource for folks trying to use that in their own homes and properties. But at the same token, I want to be really crystal clear what is actually legally required of property owners and what is there just as an educational thing, which I think we can do. I think if I understand right, there is a difference between guidelines and standards, or there's might be other ways of phrasing that can really be used to that extent. But I think we had a really good conversation, and Ted, you had also gone through and did a really nice detailed commentary on this. And it seems like there's a couple like themes there. One is which is, let's enrich this where we need to, streamline it where we need to, seek to make it flexible for these new areas as they come on board. And then I think also overarchingly, it's there to protect the resources and make that feasible for folks too, realizing that at the end of the day, it's the people that live and own these properties that are going to be doing the work. So a lot of the revisions that, like, for example, that I saw in your document go towards, let's focus on the really critical items that contribute to the neighborhood. I mean, let's get rid of some items that maybe don't. And I think that's all going to help enhance making that continue to be desirable neighborhoods to live in. I think it'll achieve those goals that way. So
increase the livability,
Increase the
or
livability.
ensure the livability and stuff like that. And Mary Jo brought up some things that seemed that we thought, well, should be there, but aren't, like the National Register items are not necessarily covered by some of the under the local, and that's something that she had picked up on right off the bat,
Well, I know I spoke about it at the last meeting, and I was talking about making a national or a national register property, somehow getting the ordinance that it would become a local. I looked up the ordinance that I was referring to, and I had forgotten. It been about 15 years since I looked at it. But all we did was add the statement in the certificate of appropriateness section that those properties would come under review, anything listed in the National Register. So that I had emailed Ray about that, and he thought that would work too. So that's a lot easier than trying to make a national designation a local designation. So anyway, I think that's important. I think if we have an ordinance that's going to protect historic resources, it doesn't make sense that it doesn't protect National Register listed properties. I don't know whether the city council will agree with that or not, but I think we can build a case for it, probably. I've got a comment on another subject.
Sure.
With that. Yep. When we were talking about separating the guidelines into a separate document, Ted, you had mentioned students working on that.
Yeah, one of his notes.
Students.
Is there funding for it?
Well, having it as a student project would
Yeah,
be the guidelines.
I'm drawing a blank of what I said, but, I just speaking very generally about this, I think especially planning students, any opportunity we have to get them to look at these ordinances and think about how they could work better. I mean, that represents a lot of the types of projects that we do in the planning department. I mean, I don't have any, maybe I don't remember exactly what I said, but certainly there are students who
Well,
like to look at these things.
I think that.
They can
you
do
know,
the
that-
legwork.
That document is going to require a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If it's taken out, because I think you're gonna have to combine all the districts and just include every, so it covers everything, and it's probably gonna be quite an undertaking, not that we couldn't do it, but it would be, yeah, I think it'd be a great student project, but definitely
Yeah.
a good learning experience.
especially if we want to have a distinctive, if we're talking about different guidelines for different areas, which would be more appropriate, I think.
Well, I think there can be a residential guideline, but I think you would definitely need separate guidelines for the
downtown.
commercial, yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd be looking at creating 2 new documents.
Mhm.
So, and I think that has to be done in conjunction with the ordinance, so I think the commitment is gonna be pretty long-term for us to be able to get all that done, so. I'm not sure putting, I don't know. It just seems like a really huge project.
Yeah. One of the things that we've talked about in my department, in community and regional planning, is how, in addition to all the, Ray, you know what I'm talking about here, but in addition to all the planning skills that the students need to go find employment in City of Ames or City of Mason City, wherever, they need to know the laws, they need to know zoning, they need to know historic preservation, they need to know urban design to a certain extent. But they also need to have that ability to convey information graphically.
Mhm.
And so, this is exactly the type of thing that we're talking about here. I mean, everything you need to know about the ordinance is here. It exists, right? It's impenetrable, but it exists. And so I think, maybe even to get a student or a bunch of students to take, this textual narrative and turn it into something graphical and readable and usable by the average homeowner, it would be, I think, just a
Yeah.
stellar project.
Right. I think it would be something that I think we could work with the students as well on, but I mean, they have a lot of information, and I mean, there's this national register, there's the national guidelines, the bulletin, I forgot what number it is, plus all that's in the ordinance already.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of consolidating all of those different district guidelines and just making something that would apply citywide.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think, Ray?
Oh, there's a couple things I need to be aware of. You asked me to check about with the legal department, and I talked to one of the assistant city attorneys, and they're not supportive of taking the design guidelines out of Chapter 31. They'd be supportive of, doing like a separate, I'll call it a brochure. It's going to be more than a brochure, but, like something, a user-friendly document with the graphics in it that has the guidelines, but they see problems with taking the guidelines out of Chapter 31 and having them as a separate
Is that an issue of
document.
which documents are formally approved by the city?
Because
council?
it's considered, law,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it needs to be in the municipal code. So they weren't supportive of taking that out. And then the other thing, the city council, they approved the work plan for our department each year, and they'll be approving a work plan for our department in March. And so, there's this plus all the other planning things that we do. And so in talking with our director, he would suggest that you prioritize, maybe have a top 3 things that you'd like to see changed. And then it will become, it would go into the mix with the other planning priorities the council has for us, because we take our direction from the city council as to, what we spend our time working on. So it would go into the mix with all the other things they have in mind for us to work on. So you might want to limit it to 3 major items that you'd want to see done. Probably stand a better chance of having something included than if you had, a big long list.
Okay.
That's something we want
That's
to
it.
talk.
That's important to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are big changes, yeah.
Yes, because I was wondering how it could, the part that staff would play in it, and how much time could be devoted to it.
Yeah, we have a major thing now that the comprehensive plan, we have a new comprehensive plan, and it will require a lot of amendments to the zoning code.
Mm.
So that's going to be a major priority by the city council for us to work on.
So when you say 3 things that we should focus on, are you saying 3 edits, or are you saying 3 proposals of ideas? Oh, I'm not
Well,
going to 2 extremes there, but
I guess you could, I would try not to make each thing too large. I mean, I think the larger it is, one of the things is rewrite the design guidelines. Well, that's probably too big of an item. You probably have to narrow it down more from that. So, the more doable it is in a relatively short period of time, probably the more likely it is that they would include it.
So the design guidelines that are part of the ordinance right now are
Yeah.
very much residential oriented, right? It
Yeah.
seems
Yeah,
Um,
they're specific to each of
very.
the districts, I think.
So we really don't have any commercial, nothing that really addresses commercial right now.
No, yeah,
So that's a gaping hole.
right.
we don't have a local, historic district that's commercial.
Right.
If you want them to adopt design guidelines for downtown and make it a local historic district, that would be a major project.
That's what I'm thinking. So actually,
And
jumping-
that would be too much for one item.
right.
But if we were to change, one of the changes would be that we would review National Register properties under certificate of appropriateness. The design guidelines could just be the national design, the guidelines that go along with the standards. That would suffice until
We developed.
we could develop a commercial
Mhm.
design guideline document.
Mhm.
So, I think that is really important.
Yeah.
So that could be
Amendment or
something we
revision.
could accomplish that would be a doable item, it sounds like,
Well, if the council would agree.
if the council would agree,
Yeah.
but at least I could see. The other thing that I could see that could be at least initially looked at is, based on Angie's experiences, is that looking at our process of application more rigorously, I think, because of the sometimes the seemingly disparate, evaluation versus, building code versus the historic preservation thing. Maybe just map out what the process is. When do they go here? When do they go there? Things like that. So does that sound like a,
Do you mean the process of the COA or getting listed locally?
I think it was Angie, what was it? In the certificate of appropriateness, I think was
Yeah,
the one that,
the local process.
yeah.
So that's, I mean, that's going to, again, touch on design guidelines though. And we're gonna, it's, I think
It
everything we
will.
talk about, it's going to come back to design
It
guidelines.
still comes back to design guidelines, but I mean, I guess maybe not going into the actual ultimate nitty gritty of, particular, balustrades versus, heights and stuff, is just say, okay, so who's evaluating certain things at certain times, maybe it seemed like you got
I
hung
think
up
what-
on being referred back to people,
Well, and I think if I know, maybe the broader point is if it's more explicit when the commission gets triggered to get involved, and even if it's that opportunity to comment, not only on improvement projects, but demolitions and other things, that could be quite valuable.
I think that was something else about demolitions and things like that. And I think that maybe we haven't, I think there's some holes maybe in our evaluation of when things are going through the COA process that maybe we could examine that a little more closely. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
I think a large part of the problem that we talked about on the review was that it lacks consistency, that different people review at the staff level even. And I think this was what I felt like anyway, that the problem with having the design guidelines in the ordinance is they aren't as flexible as if they're outside of that. And it's very onerous for a property owner to come in, and those guidelines are written so specifically that it doesn't allow flexibility. And I think the property owner suffers that wants to do a project. And I don't know if it would be, if one of the attorneys could come and we could talk about that issue, because I would want the legal department to support. And I think maybe it's something we could do later on, but I really think it's important because I think that addresses the problem with having those guidelines in the ordinance, is because it is more limiting than if we are, if it's not a law, but the law specifies a guideline document that can be.
Are you thinking it wouldn't be part of the code? I mean, it wouldn't be law.
Well,
It would be advice.
the code would reference the guideline
Yeah.
document.
Yeah.
So you would still have to comply with it.
Well, that's the issue that the legal staff, the problem they had with what we proposed is that
Yeah.
city council approves the ordinance, but maybe
Right.
that doesn't extend to these things that are
But they could
referenced in.
approve the guidelines as well.
Yeah,
It should go to council as well. If there's a document that's referred to in the ordinance, they need to approve those guidelines as well.
Yeah,
But I think there's just a huge problem with having those guidelines in the ordinance, because I think it's just,
there
it
are,
invites too much
confusion.
confusion, and it's just it covers so many things that are just onerous. And if it's staff level review, I'm assuming, I don't know the staff that well here. I know there's not a person specifically for historic preservation. So,
well, that's me.
and okay,
Yeah.
but we don't know what's going to happen when you retire either.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and that's another thing about having that cleared up. We don't know what's going to be happening at the staff level down the road. So, I don't know. I just think it is a big problem, but I know it's one that is going to take a lot of time. And I would be in favor of dropping that for later, a later revision, and just adding that we do certificate of appropriateness review for National Register properties. And the other thing I would like to see if the staff would look into the possibility of moving the regulatory procedures into the zoning code. If there's going to be a lot of zoning code updates, it might be the time to do it.
Put what into the zoning code?
The regulatory procedures that are in chapter 31, moving, but have chapter 31 would be the commission and their purpose, and but any regulatory sections be moved into the zoning code.
So isn't it, preservation is addressed in the zoning though, isn't it? Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, the historic preservation regulations are considered part of the zoning regulations, really, because it's an overlay district.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
the regulations apply to that overlay district. The other thing I want to make sure you know is as you make these recommendations to the city council, they will want to, have an explanation about why do you think this should be done? Why do you think this is important?
Mm-hmm.
How's it gonna make things better?
I think.
And unfortunately,
Improve
with
transparency.
the work plan, time is short because you would need to get your recommendations to the city council in February.
Mm.
Because they're going to set the work plan likely in March.
Well,
Well,
we could do it
accomplishment-wise, we
next
could
year.
we could certainly make the recommendation for the National Register property review, include that statement. That would be easy. But I still would like to proceed with looking at improving the process of for people who are doing the certificate. Because if we're going to have people start in to do things, we need to know this ahead of time where they're going to hit the wall.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that I think that's probably, we're under too short a time frame for that.
But that doesn't mean we can't have like a side project of working on it. I mean, for
Right.
future, for the next year or something, do the preparation.
This is really to determine what would the city employees will be working on.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean the commission can't work on things.
Right.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, as commission members, you can
We could still,
move
Move
on it, but as far as staff time, we take our direction from the city council on that. So
and I could see looking at maybe having an expanded design guideline document that included visual. That would be something that would be maybe a works in project that students could assist us with, developing some drawings or photographs or whatever, a vocabulary that would go with those. And we could add that in as reference as we go. I mean, I could see that being several semesters worth of stuff.
Yeah. I agree.
there are very few graphics in the municipal code, and I know the attorney's office doesn't support graphics in the city code, and so they again would say, we're all for graphics if you have it in a brochure or some helpful document.
Right.
But as far as part of the
No,
the law,
But it could
part of the
be-
actual ordinance, they would not support graphics.
but couldn't the ordinance reference a document that could be a living document, so to
or-
speak? That-
Or I think to Mary Jo's point about, I mean, the city council approves the comp plan, and there's as much graphic information
That's
in there as there is
true.
narrative, and so
Right.
maybe the idea is just to have them
But
approve both.
it's a policy document.
Yeah,
And so it's different than the zoning code or the municipal code, because that's the law.
Mhm.
And with a policy document, they're fine with the graphics. But if it's the law, they're not fine with the graphics.
What I hear is that the law needs to be written out,
Right,
but there can be any other supplemental materials that are given to a homeowner when they come into the office that's seeking for help that we could do, but we can't
but
change.
this is what this means.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
yeah,
yeah,
if you want to do some illustrations of,
Mhm.
this is how,
yeah.
this is what we're
I think-
talking about.
I think we can,
Code.
we can achieve what we're trying to achieve, maybe not in the way that we had hoped, but we can certainly clean this up.
Yes,
Mhm.
Because I'm afraid homeowners look at this and they're thinking about tax credits or thinking about getting the property listed. They're like, forget it, I'm not gonna do this.
Right.
I don't understand this, I need a consultant. We can clean this up, we can clean chapter 31 up, and then find a way to get the design guidelines done. They can live on the city's website, right, next to chapter
Mhm.
31, so they're,
right,
they're,
accessible.
yeah, and it's clear that they're related in some, functional way. As a way to try to introduce, homeowners and lay people, introduce them to the, potential challenges and pitfalls of historic properties and historic rehab projects. I mean, maybe this is just simply a web issue too. I mean,
Mhm.
Mhm.
an educational issue.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think we need to pursue what we have wanted to do. We just need to provide information to the people who get it done. Because I just, you've gone to all the trouble of crossing out all of that stuff. I mean, I feel strongly that should not be law.
Well, yeah, I'm saying we should clean
It
this.
should be, the law should say this shall follow this document that is also adopted by the city council. And I think we can't clean up the ordinance at this point and get it done immediately. I think if we want to look at something that can make some change and help, again, why do we have the ordinance? It's to protect historic properties. So to me, we'll get more benefit, even if we just do the one, say, be able to review projects to National Register properties. I think that would be a big accomplishment that would be, and then we can do the other stuff later.
Do
Can I make one comment? Respectfully, I have a different viewpoint. I think it is worth taking time to revise text, even if that is where we end up with this stage. And still, I think we can reap a lot of benefits. No, it's not, maybe at the end point that we'd like to see it, but I think there's benefit in spending time on doing that.
Okay.
But Ray, can I ask a question? So you mentioned like 3 big things,
Uh-huh.
but if the commission wanted to take the ordinance and mark up specific words and take that on themselves, kind of like what Ted started on the PDF,
Your scar.
would that, even though that extends throughout the whole document, would that be kind of small enough that if it could count as one thing or,
I don't think it would.
okay.
Yeah. They want to see us, accomplish these things that they give us, of course, in a relatively short amount of time.
Mhm.
And so it has to be pretty concise.
Well,
What's the deadline for that? By what date would we have to identify what this group would like to see the city staff?
I would say at your February meeting.
Next month.
Yeah.
Okay. So the
Now-
best we could do would be that one
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing.
But that, I think we gotta, that one thing though is, I think potentially politically a football. I mean, would you agree, Ray? I mean, is it, I've seen store preservation commissions kind of implode from trying to forward that as an agenda. And I agree with it. I mean, I think that there's no reason in the world we shouldn't be reviewing National Register and local landmarks.
Yeah, well,
But then it subjects all the downtown property owners to COAs. And everybody in Old Town, well, they're already subjected to those.
That could be difficult to get that on the list of
Yeah.
the work plan.
we can make the recommendation though, right?
You can make a recommendation, yeah.
I mean, I think it's a valid recommendation.
Yeah,
to make.
And they
then,
may
you know,
want to know why.
include the
and we can
why.
say-
Well,
Yeah,
and I think, we have, I mean, at the end of all this stuff that we do, I mean, we have probably the best metric ever, and that's, numbers of tax credit projects at the state and federal level. Number of, the amount of money spent on those tax credit projects. I mean, that's the argument that,
Mhm.
as you guys know, is commonly made
That
in
would be,
support.
yeah, definitely.
Right, so I mean, so when it hits that point, when we're getting pushback from maybe property owners, we can say, well, there's a clear benefit to all this. And it benefits anybody in the district. And the amount of oversight, honestly, is fairly negligible, as it is in most cities that don't have high rates of development. Ames among them, so.
When you, just to clarify a little bit for me, you said we have to present this in February for the council to approve what the city employees are working on. But if we wanted to revamp these guidelines or do anything else, and let's say bring them back in August, is that putting work on the team, or is that just another suggestion that we have that maybe we did that work and presented it back?
If it involves staff time,
Okay,
then if it's not on the work plan, it could be
okay,
difficult for us to do it.
okay.
Yeah. Getting it on the work plan is the key.
So at this stage, do we want to have a subcommittee get together to talk about what we'd request of the city's time? Or do we need more time to discuss that? Or do we just want to?
one of the questions that I had is that's one that we obviously see as a need. But I know when I was reading your document here and your notes from the homeowners, and you went to, Old Town, and you were talking to different people. And then I listened to Ray say, how do we make things better? And so is there anything else? And I think it's worth an additional conversation. It doesn't have to be here. But is there anything else that would be something that would make it easier for those homeowners or anybody else in the community that we're not considering that could be an easy hit on the list of 3 priorities? And I wasn't part of your discussions, and I just kind of reviewed it, but I just,
Oh, no, that's what
Not
we
that
need. That's what
easy.
we
I know.
wanted. We wanted you all to kind of, to be in on part of the conversation.
Yeah.
It seems important to me to, the process. I'm feeling like, if we're going to be moving forward with another survey and going out and talking to the neighborhood about what this means and stuff like that, I want to have a pretty good, solid understanding of the process that they would be going through and who's reviewing what. Because they're going to be asking those questions like they were asking Angie about windows, doors,
Yeah.
roof lines, et cetera. And we can show pictures and we can talk about all this stuff, but I mean,
Well, I think as part of the grant, we built in informational sessions.
Right,
Right.
and we built in at least 2 meetings, 2
Mhm.
neighborhood meetings, so.
So you're suggesting just to move forward with the one and then just make this a longer term type of,
I think if we get the grant, we're, in some ways, we are going to be processing, design guidelines.
Well,
Mm,
yeah, no, I mean, the grant's
No.
gonna form the
we're,
nomination.
no.
Well, it's on the nomination, but we do a lot of descriptive stuff on those, nominations that basically become part of what they have to
Well-
be reviewed on.
I don't see any quick fix to what Angie went through
No.
and some other
quick
property
fix,
owner. And that's just not gonna happen. I think we just shouldn't rush the revision project, that we maybe keep a committee going, maybe meeting, maybe once a month in the
Mhm.
next year or 6 months, and then come up with maybe a more solid recommendation that we can look at or have staff look at. But it's going to take a lot of work to get any of these items and issues taken care of.
I agree.
And
But I
a lot
think
of
it's gonna be
discussion, and it's just going to require a lot of work. Because you've got to make people understand why you're doing it. And if somebody knows you're going to be making revisions to the historic preservation ordinance, they're just going to automatically say, okay, this is more regulation, I don't want it. And it's just going to take a lot of, like, meetings we're going to have for the survey.
Mhm.
We've got to start explaining to people, yes, it can be a very difficult process. We're working on it. This is how it works now. This is how it can work. I think we can get a lot of mileage out of giving information through this survey project.
I agree.
So I think we just have to kind of step back a little and kind of hope for the best.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really uncomfortable to go out to a neighborhood meeting and have people start yelling about
Oh,
the
well,
restrictions.
yeah, I remember those
And,
days.
We need to, we'll need
So-
our vote too eventually, right? I mean,
Yeah, so it's I think just taking opportunities that we can take advantage of is all we can probably do for now.
thinking we also might not want to be tackling the issue of reviewing local and national register while we're trying to get a national register nomination district in place. I don't know. I suppose in the interest of transparency, we'd have to say that we're pushing to have these national register districts reviewed by this commission, and that might not sit as well with people.
Well, yeah, but the survey is just gathering information. That's not, doesn't mean it's going to be a national register nomination. So, I mean, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So, but,
But if we do the survey and we identify a district, then and SHPO agrees with it, then it functionally, it's a DOE.
Set.
It's a
Yeah.
DOE. I mean, it's going to be off.
yeah, but you still have to write the nomination.
Right.
True.
Right, but-
And that's also, you have to have at least 50%
Right.
of property owners. So we don't have to do that to do a survey. So I wouldn't even talk about, if I, at a neighborhood meeting, I would just explain what the survey is to gather information and just say, it does provide the information if you want to have it designated.
Right.
But I wouldn't go into.
No, you talk about the carrots, not the sticks.
Exactly, yeah, you don't want to, so I don't know.
So what do you need from us now with agenda item number 7? Do we need to make any motions? Do we need to just agree as a committee to get together, 3 of us, no more than 3 of us, to continue to talk about this?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily need any motion.
Okay.
Mhm.
Are we discussed out here?
Yeah, I think we've got at least a couple of committee kind of paths to go, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So maybe we flesh that out.
I think maybe to get, more or less a strategy and timeline maybe would be helpful.
Mhm.
And then maybe look at all the items we want to change and figure out, or maybe we want to look at taking guidelines, making them into different document. Maybe we would do that 2 years down the road or something.
I think so. I think just saying everything is a lot of work doesn't get it done.
Mhm.
Is a kind of manageable thing, Ray. Could we ask you, and I suppose we could just do this ourselves, but maybe it's better coming from the city's attorney. I mean, there are loads of cities out there that have design guidelines that
Mhm.
either exist as legal documents alongside their ordinances, or they exist in some other, they exist in some other way. But could we have your staff or the attorney maybe look to see how this has been handled in other cities in Iowa? Or is that
Or do we make
that a top three?
recommendations of please
Um,
look at this?
yeah,
You would have to make a request, city council
okay.
direct us to do that, actually.
That might have been one of our recommendations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's,
yeah, that's the process we have to follow.
Okay.
Sure.
Could we have one of the attorneys come to a meeting and discuss it, or
Well,
is that possible?
I don't know. I'd have to check.
Okay.
But they seem pretty
Adamant?
adamant.
It's times like this, I wish
Yeah.
we had access to
Had
Paula
to be
more.
part of the
so.
municipal code.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, they need to be in chapter 31.
Okay.
With the regulations in the municipal code, we deal with the zoning regulations all the time. And I know they're very specific and not flexible, but a lot of times there's a reason for that. It is for consistency.
Yeah.
And it is scrutinized to the point of, well, if that were a semicolon instead of a comma, then it means
Yeah.
this. I mean, scrutinize word for word for word, punctuation mark by punctuation mark, so that's why it is as specific as it is, because, it can end up in court.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what the attorney's office is thinking about too, is
Right.
it has to be something that we can administer and enforce.
Well, that's certainly something we can just
Keep
kind of
in
explore. We can
mind,
explore
yeah.
ourselves too. I mean,
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Unless there are other comments about chapter 31, we'll move on to item number 8, commission comments. Anybody?
So when we meet in February, what do we expect? What's going to be on our agenda? A recommendation for the work?
So for the,
For February.
A recommendation for what?
So what do
City
we,
council.
yeah, for Ray to
Hmm.
add to the work program? The review of National Register?
Well, we could have one more committee meeting and
Yeah.
decide what to
You
do.
think
I
so?
think we should have another committee
At
meeting.
least.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from every member if there's other items we haven't even talked about maybe. And the goal would be to identify our top 3, maybe, that we come in February and recommend. Those are our top 3 that we want to push forward.
Or up to 3.
Up to
Maybe.
3, yeah.
We don't want to do
I think
that.
decide. I had one comment. Ray, we've mentioned this in the past, and then it falls off my radar, but I'm wondering, can we pursue membership in the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. And we talked about that in the past, and I've forgotten about it promptly after I've mentioned it, but it's, for a city the size of Ames, the annual fee is based on the population, and we're in the largest city, so it's $150 annually. Is that something we could consider? Do we have budget for that?
Let me check on that. I
Okay.
forgot about that too.
So are you guys familiar with NAPC?
Mhm.
NAPC is it's the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. It's just the nonprofit that brings together expertise from groups like ours in cities that are much smaller, up to cities that are New York in size. And they're very active. They have one of the few listservs, NAPCL, that I actually get good information from. It's a very active community. They give you assistance on design guidelines, on store preservation plans, technical assistance. And they have a conference, I think, every couple of years. It was in Des Moines 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
It's actually in Cincinnati this year. And I mention this too because in the past, Ray, you've encouraged us to go to this conference. Is part of the education funds that we have through the pass-through money?
Well, when it was in Des Moines,
Oh,
no.
okay.
that's when it was, cheap enough that we could,
Yeah.
register people and, it's close enough for, with transportation and so forth. So, with it being in Cincinnati, it's probably not as
Okay.
likely.
But the membership, if we could
Yeah,
just get the membership,
Yeah.
$150 a year, it would provide the commission a lot of information
Mhm.
that would
Yeah.
address a lot of things.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
Yeah, it's a
right
good
now,
organization.
this would be
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah. Your email, if you subscribe to the listserv, your email will be flooded with, unfortunately, but all the listserv emails are archived, and so you can go back and search on them, and it's really, really helpful. You're familiar with it, Mary Jo. I mean, it's a great
Yeah.
resource.
good resource.
Well, it'd be very timely right now
Mhm.
to have some resource like that available to us. Say the name of it again, the National,
It's National Alliance, I'll send an email.
Alliance,
National
okay.
Alliance, NAPC.
okay,
And it's not napc.org. That's a URL taken by another organization. But
gotcha,
if you search for National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, you'll get
okay.
it. Any other commission comments?
Well, I'll just comment on our grant, just so it's in the minutes, on the record. We were notified that we did get our grant. Our application was approved. And we don't have the information on the exact amount. I'm assuming we got what we applied for, but that comes later, I guess. So well, the mayor got this letter. It was addressed to the mayor. So will he announce it or do anything to announce it to the council or?
I think the state announces it first.
They do, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it says for
And
him
then
not to
the
make
city
it
could follow
public.
that.
Okay.
Oops.
So
He's made it public.
I guess you have to wait
Yeah,
to look at hiring students in, right?
yeah. No.
Okay.
Well, kudos to everybody for making that happen. I think, Mary Jo, your name is on it, so you get full credit for that. But,
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
I
you,
have to make sure it
everybody.
gets done too.
Oh, this is exciting.
Some good news, bad news.
Thank you for your help with that too, Ray, and all your staff.
I didn't do much. Eloise probably did more than,
Yeah,
Anyone else
Eloise
in our
helped a
office?
lot.
Why those
yes.
maps made a big,
Yeah.
Yes,
This is long overdue. This is really good.
yes. I hopefully we can kind of get in the system more and get other projects funded. That would be good.
Anyone else? Any staff comments, Ray?
I've got nothing to add right now.
Unless there's anything else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.